Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to our webinar today. Really exciting topic for you today, sifting through the haystack. We're going to hear from an expert in just a sec. Three things that he learned when choosing a CLM system. So welcome. My name is Paul Branch. I'm the Chief Networking Officer here at World Commerce and Contracting, and it's my delight to be your host for this webinar today. We're partnering with ContractPodAi. So Jerry, welcome back to the stage.
Thank you, Paul. And I just realized that I am wearing the exact same outfit I'm wearing in my picture. So
you do have more clothes though, right? It's not.
I own one set of clothing and I just wash it every day, Paul.
Excellent. So Jerry is
every day. Really? Every day?
What's that, Chris?
I was just saying every day, Jerry. Every day, really, every day.
Not, you know, for this audience, I'll claim to wash it every day, but you and I know the truth, Chris.
So Jerry is the Chief Evangelist and General Counsel at ContractPodAi, and Chris Fox. Welcome, Chris. Welcome to the webinar. Chris is General Counsel and Company Secretary at Zellis, and Chris is our superstar today. He's the guy who's going to share his experiences. Now, you've joined the webinar today, and we thank you for that. You've joined with your lines muted, and that will be the nature of the beast. Doesn't mean to say we don't want to hear from you. We most absolutely do. Use that Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. We'll ask them of the panel, so see if we can stump them. And then the meaty questions maybe we'll save up for the end because we do have a Q&A slot right at the very end. The slides themselves and a copy of the recording for the webinar today will be circulated to you after the event. So do keep an eye out for that, along with a survey, so you can tell us what you really thought about the webinar today. So without further ado then, Chris, why don't you tell us just a little bit about Zellis and your responsibilities there?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Well, firstly, I'd like to say I hesitate to have been introduced as both an expert and a superstar, so feeling a little intimidated, but I'll do my best. So
it will be fine.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. So Zellis is a payroll company, but we've also got a number of other businesses and a number of other products and services that we offer our customers. That a lot of them complementary services such as benefits, reward, recognition, background checking, really lots of different services that are all designed to enrich the employee experience and also help employees be paid on time. So we've got sort of a few little facts here in terms of our occupation in the UK market, and we're very proud of some of those stats. You know, for example, 29% of the FTSE 100 are our customers. I think we also serve sort of 1 in 6 employees within the UK as well. So we're transacting a lot of payroll for people and really trying to help people out. And then, as I say, there's lots of other services that are attached to that. But really, it's an interesting company to work for because it's a group. It's a group of businesses. We've got different companies, as I say, providing different products and services. And in that group, we've got sort of different sizes of customer as well. And Paul, when we were speaking about things just a little earlier, we were having a chat about it, and I think it's a great role to have because you know, we do a big SME base, but we also do the larger enterprise customers. We do contracts on our paper and very, very standard T's and C's, but we also do highly bespoke agreements as well, which are on other parties' T's and C's. So it's an exciting company to be the GCL.
So Chris, highlight for us, if you would, the number of resources that you have performing this commercial and contract management role.
So within the context of the legal team or cross-functional?
Yeah. Let's do both. Legal first, and then the wider cross-functional areas.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, the way that we've built out the function at Zellis and also across the group is that we've got I'm responsible for legal and governance, risk and compliance. So those are my sort of two areas. But within the legal team, it's a fairly lean core team that will be supporting our internal customers in terms of moving through the quote to cash process and working with the sales guys on taking their opportunities all the way through to execution. But we do work cross-functionally, so there's a lot of work with sales enablement and different people, different folks within the Zellis and Morpay and Benefex businesses as well, to help them move contracts forward. I can't give you the exact numbers in terms of the size of those different functions, but as I say, I can say that it's a lean legal team, but we work very much on a cross-functional basis, trying to just do the best for our internal customers to get contracts done as quickly as possible so that our customers have a good customer journey as well.
So based on our research, we've been a benchmarking study we released quite recently. It was clear that 25% of the resources within a corporation have some engagement in the commercial and contract management activities, 25%. So obviously these are not all negotiating the contracts, but certainly they may be in finance, validating the transactions. They may be in some operational role delivering. They may be in sales pre-award. Does that sort of resonate with you? Is that the sort of proportion that you'd expect to see in Zellis?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess how I've answered the question so far. I focus very much on customer agreements, but there's a huge suite of agreements that can be served by a CLM system and process, and you can talk from a supplier perspective. There's any number of ancillary contracts as well. So yeah, absolutely. And I think that the only way that you can decentralized function whereby you're leveraging the capabilities and the effectiveness of other teams and helping to deliver work product efficiently is really the only way of building a business. You can't centralize everything within legal. I saw a question pop up. I'm very happy answering it now.
Sure. So Sam has asked, are all your contracts drafted only in the legal team, or do you have some form of delegation that allows the sales team to draft a portion or some of the contract form, perhaps based on a standard set of clauses that have been pre-approved? How does that work in your organization? Good question, Sam. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'd say that we're kind of on a journey to get to what I would see as nirvana, is having really effective governance to take a salesperson from prospecting all the way through to execution, whereby they're able to self-serve on elements of the contract. I'm talking about a customer agreement here. They're able to self-serve on different elements of the contract as they progress through that journey, and where they dive in support from lawyers or other experts as needed, and where they're also able to get the relevant approvals, which it's a bit of a spoiler, the fact that I'm talking on a panel where I'm speaking with Jerry and it's ContractPodAi, but one of the things that really excited me about Jerry and the products and services that they have is that it really facilitates that vision of having guardrails, having a clean governance pathway, and only engaging resource outside of the sales function when it's needed. And why is that valuable? Well, I think it really creates a frictionless experience for the salesperson. It speeds everything up, so it means the salesperson can focus on what they do best rather than just progressing the agreement. And it's a much better experience for the customer as well. And that's all nested within the wrapper of better risk management. So to answer the question, it's very much the goal. Are we there yet? No, we haven't finished the implementation. We haven't finished a side project which we've got, which is updating all of our precedents, but that's very much where we'd like to get to.
Very good. Interesting.
Well, I would say, and I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but we find that a lot, that part of what happens during the implementation, during the discovery process, and even ongoing, is exactly what Chris just mentioned, is that we find that a lot of the time as we go through the process, and I think that this is general, whenever you introduce a new technology, new workflow, new ideas, new workflows into a business, you end up finding that you do have to update your precedents. You do have to update your flow of how documents flow, how people work, and even how you approach risk. One thing, so Chris and I will probably talk a little bit more about the funny things that have led up to this a little later. But one of the things that I remember we talked about, Chris, was just how do you manage risk when it's ever changing, and how do you deal with these ideas of, you know, what could come next? But one of the key things is really how do we want to give you the freedom as a legal leader to not have to look at everything. You know, if we could take away the I have to be on every single email, I have to be on every single document exchange, so that you've got time to do what you actually want to be doing, and not just sitting there, you know, getting emails from a salesperson. Is this NDA okay? That's really part of our one of our core goals. We want to make you a better lawyer, a better person, and really we want you to have time to actually do your job, and not the, I guess, busy work.
And I agree, and I think that speaks to the governance and the really effective tramlines of creating a safe space within which salespeople can play as they go through that journey, the quote to cash process, getting to execution. But to your point about risk ever changing, so I think that's a really important one, because you know, nothing's static, is it? You're always going to be faced with, you know, more threats from more vectors. Like at the moment, cybersecurity and insurance for cybersecurity breaches is just going through the roof, because everyone is seeing so much more exposure, and just premiums are higher and capacity in the market is lower. So you've got to change your risk approach in relation to that. And I think that's one of the reasons why engaging in CLM technology and investing in it is so crucial, because it means that you can be data driven in your risk management. You can report on your agreements, you can get data from lots of different sources, and then you can make decisions on risk based upon your contractual estate and your external or your internal risk factors. That is truly data driven, as opposed to, say, just responding to, you know, your last experience. So I think that's another really big pillar for me of engaging in the right technology.
Absolutely. I mean, we see, you know, in based on our research, again, there are these 40 odd friction points within the CLM process itself. Many of those introduce material risks into the process, and by the application of technology, you can overcome certainly some of those friction points in the way that perhaps, Chris, you've just described. Interesting. So Fawad has a question. So I think this is one's back to you, Jerry. So what you are referencing is changing your internal processes a little to adapt to the tool, as opposed to always trying to make the tool fit your existing process.
Yeah,
do you want to run that one?
Fawad, Paul, that's a question we actually get a lot. And I think it's something that we see is as almost a give and take, because there are, what we found is that at ContractPod and generally, as you adopt these tools, you need to adapt to both the tool, but also see how it fits in to your workflow, and how things flow. And I keep using the word workflow, because it does change how you do things. You know, now, I don't think any of us are, you know, not used to using computers anymore, but when computers first appeared, people really had to adapt to them. The internet changed how lawyers work in general, and we're seeing that again. And what happens is when we go through the implementation process, when we work with our customers to figure out what the next step is, and even internally, when I joined ContractPod early last year, you know, we find that there are processes in place that have to change depending on how we're working, how we deal with people, and even how we contract, how we give advice to the business. so there is a benefit to adapting to the tool, and you don't always want the tool to fit into existing process. You don't always want to force the tool to fit your existing process, because oftentimes you'll find that something in your existing process was designed specifically for a manual, non-assisted, non-augmented technology. So we usually find that there's a bit of give and take where, you know, we will find out from the ContractPod side, the customer is doing this right now. You tell us you're doing this, but we found that maybe it works a little better like this. But of course, it's always a collaborative effort. And I mean, that really depends on the provider, on the nature of the implementation team, but there is quite a bit that can be done. So I know that's the most lawyerly answer I could have given there, that it depends, I guess, is the answer I'm giving. But, you know, I think always doing one or always doing the other leads to either, you know, either an unhappy customer or a software that doesn't work the way you are expecting.
I think so we're going to Chris about the importance of understanding this need, but certainly in my experience too, reviewing the process, making sure that it does emulate best practice before you then engineer it into a tool is absolutely a smart step. Collaboratively, for sure, the tool has if you've selected the right tool, has best practices built into the workflows. Chris,
exactly, Paul.
What's your thoughts on that? Is that a smart way to proceed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a balance. Having said that, I didn't when we were looking at CLM solutions, I just an off-the-shelf product that we needed to bend ourselves around wouldn't have worked for us and didn't work for us when we looked at those solutions. We needed something that was going to be more of a partnership, something that was more able to be rendered effective for our organization. As I said at the beginning, it's a really interesting group to be the GC of. We've got really, really big enterprise customers on their paper, very, very sophisticated managed service payroll. We've got, and then on the other side of the coin, we've got, you know, super important customers, but they're much smaller, where it's done on standard T&Cs, and we're transacting thousands and thousands of customers in that space, and that's across our group. And we needed to find a tool that was able to work with the myriad different use cases that we had, but become a one source of truth and enable us to report on that data, so that I can provide really valuable insight in audit and risk committee meetings or board meetings or in exco meetings, or just quickly on the call with my CEO. We obviously haven't finished the implementation yet, but that was the goal, and that's why we are that's why I'm here talking about it, because that's why we chose ContractPod. That's one of the key reasons for me.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to hear much more from you just in a sec, Chris, just on your experiences. But before we do that, let's hear from our audience. So guys, we got a poll for you. We love these polls. So please, you tell us, where are you on your CLM implementation journey? Have you already started? Do you plan to do this within the next 1 to 2 years, the next 3 to 4 years, or are you not really planning to deploy a CLM tool at all? So if you have one in place, obviously that's already started. The other three are your remaining options. So please vote often. And Jennifer, if we could perhaps close the poll, and let's take a quick look at the results. Right, really good news. I think if we'd run this poll a year ago, we would have seen many more folks in the not planning bucket. The fact that 40% or more have already started, with 50% planning to do something within the next year or two, that is really good news. That's consistent with our experiences at World CC. We're seeing folks definitely moving forward with a CLM implementation plan, and not just standalone CLM capability, but ones that are integrated into back office systems. So guys, is this what we would have expected, do you think?
Well, Paul, I will say before this call, you did tell us no one would answer that they were not planning on one, but I think that this is really, really along the lines of what we're seeing here.
Right.
And by the way, am I flashing pink and purple on my camera, Paul?
Your camera did go off offline just very briefly just now, but it looks perfect for right now. But guys, if you did vote in that no plans, perhaps if you wouldn't mind just dropping into chat what the thought was, what your maybe there's a good justification for why you're not embarking on a CLM journey. It'd be really interesting to hear that. Chris, any other observations?
Sorry, I'm not very good at multitasking, so I was just answering a question at the same time. I mean, the answers aren't surprising, but as I think you just made the comment about not planning and people posting in chat, I'd be really interested to understand the circumstances around why a CLM solution wouldn't be implemented all in the future. Just because I think that it's kind of part of the critical pathway. Like I've got this view that a lot of legal teams are or were quite analog, and a lot of other functions have digitized over the last 10, 20 years. And really, legal teams are digitizing now. And I think that a CLM solution is a core part of that. But there could always be specific business reasons why it wouldn't be something that would be invested in.
Yeah, totally. The legal, commercial and contract management, the last bastion of digitalization, for sure. Yeah, about time, because there's so much more that you can do with once your contracts are in a digital form, and you can extract information from them that then you can use for business insights. Cool. Okay, so the superstar and our expert, over to Chris. Chris, you're going to tell us about your experiences sifting through this haystack. 3 things that you learned when choosing your CLM system. Over to you, matey.
Thank you. And can I just answer a question from Rose first of all, because I wasn't able to.
Go for it.
Thank you. So I'm just reading your question.
So did you look specifically for products that help manage contracting drafting processes? What other things? You did look at integration and vendor onboarding. Was contract performance important? We talked about risk management already.
Yeah. So for me, I was a bit greedy because I wanted a solution that was what were the points that were important to me without sort of going into the more philosophical positions that I think we'll come on to. So specifically, some things that were important to me. I did, as we've talked about, I wanted a tool that could be rendered appropriate and bespoke, if you forgive the use of that, bespoke for our group and for the different use cases. So that was really important. I wanted a solution that would be able to operate as a really powerful contract repository in addition to a CLM solution, and that was critical to me too. And why was that important? Well, I wanted to report on the data in the way that I've previously described. I wanted the solution to not just be useful and relevant to the customer contract journey, but I wanted it to be relevant to other use cases as well. So, for example, vendor management. So that's a good beat to pull out. And I also wanted it to interface with the other function that I set out at the beginning that I'm responsible for. So governance, risk, and compliance. I wanted it to be able to interface there and be powerful in terms of risk management, in terms of not just the governance of the sales process, but the governance of some of those other contractual journeys that we've talked to, and to be additive in terms of that conversation. So I suppose, how do I summarize that? I wanted a tool that could work for our business, and I wanted it to provide a suite of different services, but the internal customer journey, contract from quote to cash, was probably the most important.
So really understanding that business need, what the corporation needs in the moment, but also I would suggest into the future as well, so that whatever you deploy has legs into the future. So having that strategic view about where you're going as a commercial team is really, really, really important too.
Yeah, I think going beyond Rose's question, sort of into the more, as I say, the more sort of philosophical approach.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding the requirements of the business. We've talked to a lot of that, but that involved quite a lot of conversation, and I think that's what's critical. You need to really engage with all of your stakeholders and make sure that you recognise all of the different needs within the business in terms of going to the different functions and engaging, because it won't just be legal that's using the tool; it will be other stakeholders as well. So yeah, so we've talked about this previously, obviously, but understanding the requirements of both the company and the stakeholders was sort of like the philosophical sort of key learning, I would say.
Do you think that extends beyond the enterprise? Do you think that now extends into the ecosystem, both into the supply side and perhaps up into your customers as well?
So in terms of the way the service can interact outside of your business, or?
Exactly, yeah. So understanding how if you're going to have this enterprise view of business insights, you're going to need data, I would suggest, from up and down your supply chain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that ultimately when you're crafting a solution when you're determining a solution to a problem, you want data from as many places as possible, internal and external. And I think that, I don't know, that maybe the broader comment I'd make to your point is that I feel that technology in the legal space, it's really the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we're going to be able to do. There'll be far more integrations in the future between businesses, enabling much more efficient automation and contractual negotiation. So I think that where we are now compared to where we will be in 20 years' time is absolutely light and day. If people think that they've seen a lot of change over the last 10 years, I think look at what the next 10 years will bring. There'll be far more integrations. And when we finally get to the stage where general artificial intelligence actually comes along and really changes things up, it's going to be a scary but exciting world to live in.
Right, cool. So Rose, we're going to come to your question in just a second, because that's going to tee us up nicely for Chris's second point. But Jerry, let's come back to you first. What do you see in this understanding of business need? Is this an important area that you've seen from your engagements?
Well, I think it is, and actually I'm glad that Rose's question just came up, because we are seeing it. And if you're looking at the slides right now, we've had this view at ContractPod of having looking at whether the business needs are operational, analytical, or strategic. And we use that because they fall into the different, they somewhat or mostly align with the business life cycle of most businesses, where is your need essentially, we've just got to get control of this? Is it getting to a point where you're asking to solve data analysis problems, or are you turning into where we see most GCs and CLOs and legal leaders wanted to get to, being a very strategic leader within the company, having insight and having knowledge? Now, Rose's question was really interesting, because it's coming into where we're seeing a lot of the change. It's not just, can you manage contracts? And I was actually starting to write a response to her in the chat, Paul, that it's in some ways ContractPodAi may be our brand name, but it's increasingly becoming almost a misnomer, because we're starting to handle IP management, vendor management, risk analysis. We're beginning to get these questions, and as they've come in from customers, we've begun to expand the tool, whether it's through integrations with other tools, or whether it's something where we've said, we can build an application that does that within our system. To the idea of the business needs, it's really begun a big value chain, a growth in the value chain. because what we've also seen is that as as legal becomes more comfortable with the process and with technology, we're also finding out that our friends in LDO groups, in legal operations, are saying, well, we could bring this and automate this area within a separate section of business. Or if we can cooperate better with the finance team, if they can get direct insight into what we're doing, we can avoid other issues that we weren't aware of. So there is a tremendous increase in where we're seeing the needs of the business and it's good. We're seeing that legal is beginning to align more with the needs of the business. And I know as a GC, the most hated thing, my most hated name, was the Department of No, or the guys who slow everything down. So we're also seeing our customers are being able to answer questions more quickly, and therefore the view within the business areas is really a tremendous area for growth and for managing risk, for managing the strategic leadership, and being a much more active and enjoyable part of the C-suite, part of the sales process, part of any process. And I'm happy to say that we're really seeing that, and we're really proud of our customers who are doing that. And we're looking forward to really bringing that to more. And I enjoy not being called the Department of No. I mean, personally, my favorite part is not being called the Department of No, and instead getting emails like, that was incredible. We were expecting a 3-day turnaround, and it's been 5 minutes. So I think it's true. We're seeing that.
And it's a positive improvement spiral. You see
Yes.
folks starting to engage and being responsive back into the team with ideas about how to continuously improve. That's a good model. Okay, so knowing the business requirements, being able to articulate those in a way. Rose's question. So when you wrote the scope, did you present the requirements in a sort of statement of works, or did you look for a solution while presenting your desired results and outcomes from a CLM product? So was it a clearly defined set of requirements at the front, or was it more of a sort of an agile understanding development of business need as you were looking at the CLM software? So I guess that's probably a question for you first, Chris, and then we'll have.
Yeah,
Chris, this may be a good time for you to mention how you develop the scope and the requirement.
Well, we are okay, but Paul, we're torpedoing a later slide, but I'll cover it off here because I think it's the best way of answering the question.
I'm sorry.
No. So what I was going to say was, so Rose, it's basically a combination. So in terms of being very clear on engaging with the business, being very clear on what we ultimately needed, and then articulating that to vendors, in this instance, Jerry. Yes, did all that, but also was a bit more agile and very much more relationship focused, because I think that for me, in addition to really understanding the requirements of the business, and another point that we'll come on to, for me, the third point is the relationship is critical with your supplier. You've really got to invest in that and like break down all the barriers and have a very transparent exchange of information so that you understand exactly what is possible in the product, and they can communicate what's possible to do, and your needs are being surfaced and shown, and then you can just get over all of the speed bumps and all of the hurdles. So I think that relationship is critical. And what Jerry is alluding to is the fact that when he came to London, and I'd previously, so I'd met him in a previous engagement. I think we were doing some form of conference somewhere. So I'd met him and I was like, oh, you're cool, you're in London. Well, it'd be great to meet up because I've just, I'm general counsel of this company called Zellis, and I'd love to chat to you about some of the things that we need, because we've been talking about it for a couple of years. And so I sort of took him on a 4-hour date along the Thames, and we ate vegan hot dogs and sort of held hands and danced off into the sunshine together. But it was a great opportunity to get to know Jerry better. and he's got some amazing anecdotes about Neil Gaiman and fantasy and things like that maybe he'll talk to. But really good to get to know him. But in that conversation, we obviously got a chance to really talk about what Zellis's requirements were, and I think that relationship has helped the implementation go so much better, because we're both speaking from a position of much closer to perfect information in terms of what Zellis needs, but also what ContractPod can deliver. So going back to your question, yes, was very clear on the requirements, but the agility, I think, comes through the relationship, which I think is absolutely fundamental.
Very interesting. So, okay, so first off, it's important to know and understand the business requirement. So what's your second, lesson learned then, Chris?
Yeah, so we've sort of done the first and the third, haven't we? But the second was the fact that, I think it's really important to research the market, to understand what different vendors, what different suppliers can offer you, and what the functionality is of those different products and services. So once you've got the deepest understanding that you can achieve through that external lens, you then are dovetailing that in with the first point, which is understanding what the requirements of the business are, and then that's going to be the setup for the engagement that you have with the various suppliers, vendors in the marketplace.
So thank you, Chris. So making sure that your business needs can be met through the application of a particular piece of technology. So how do you do that? How did you do that? And then let's hear from Jerry about how other folks have approached it. So how do you do that matching, Chris?
How do we match the different functionality that was available in the products and services to what we needed? Is that the...
Yeah, so that you could be confident that it met your business need.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, it's important to attend seminars like this and go to, now that we're, hopefully slowly entering a post-COVID world, or at least a world where COVID is this thing we have to manage.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, exactly. We, going to conferences, speaking with people, understand, like talking to other GCs or lawyers or legal operations professionals, talking to people, understanding the challenges that they've overcome, seeing if their use case is similar to your own, trying to just engaging with people and seeing what their solutions were to the problem. So I think that technology is moving so quickly that the best way of staying on top is to have lots of different vectors of engagement, so that you can hopefully take in information and then come to understand the market, and then that's going to give you the points, the companies A, B, and C that are a good fit for you, and then you're obviously doing a deeper dive into those companies, because you're not just doing the external assessment, you're getting them to be able to talk to you, and that's where you can test, okay, right, from what I think, does the products and service work for me? If so, then do all of the other elements of the relationship work for me? If so, do the people that I'm going to be working with work for me? And if so, then you're likely to have a supplier that's going to be a good way of serving your company.
Great set of steps there. I think also professional bodies like World CC have a material role to play in that education, that sharing, that description of the market, where we are in terms of skills and capabilities, through webinars just like this. Really, this is a great education tool. So thank you again for your time today. But also there are other things. We have a what we call the software comparison tool, which is a tool that's out there. ContractPodAi, like many of our service provider members, have a profile within that tool. It enables you to put in your business needs, and then it will come up with basically a list of validated capabilities of tools that are out there. It's a great place to start. Not the only place, but certainly, to Chris's point, it's another way of educating yourself in how to be a good consumer. So I just put the link to the software comparison tool out there. It's a resource that's generally available. It's not provided only to members. So so please do take advantage of that. So Jerry, coming back to you now though. So we've heard from Chris and a little bit from World CC. What's your experience? How do folks do this matchmaking between the business need and the product?
So Paul, I think it's a really good question. And this is when I always point out that I was not always here. I was actually a person who purchased the software for many years. And by the way, I did use the tool when it went back when it was IACCM. I used the older version when I was selecting it. So one thing that, and Chris is right. I actually posted this in the discussion forums at another legal operations group, that when I was picking out a tool in 2018, 2019 at my prior role, where I was also GC, I went through about 35 vendors, and quite a few were not right. And I think that ultimately it is a decision based on what your company does, where you currently are in your life cycle, and what you're looking to accomplish. There are what I like to think of as document first tools in CLM and record first tools in CLM. There are full life cycle providers. There are pre and post execution only providers. There are plugins for certain, there's plugins that only work in Salesforce. There some that only work with a specific CRM or ERM system. And I think it's not just going to have to be a tool unless, well, I guess in some cases it is. We do have customers, we do see people who say no one but legal will use this. We only want this as a legal department tool. But the first step, and I think, is what does your business need? What are you doing? Are you trying to simply control where documents are stored, where your contracts are stored? Or are you looking to really give everybody in the organization the ability to do these tasks, to find out where things are, to create requests, to generate documents? And it's a difficult and ongoing decision, I think, that really means that internally, sometimes you have to figure out what you're doing first. What are your needs as a department? And there are wonderful providers out there that do consulting. I heard a few weeks ago, someone at Mark Ross at Deloitte and I were speaking about what's the first question you should ask as a customer. And oftentimes his first question is, what's the value you're trying to what's the value you're trying to receive, and what's the value you're trying to deliver? Because if you don't know what you're trying to do, you'll end up with, unfortunately, I failed my first implementation. It was not ContractPodAi. It was a service that basically kept documents in what was, for all intents and purposes, was a copy of SharePoint. And it wasn't what I needed at the time. And so I think that's figuring out your need and figure out the vendors that have the closest fit is important, because otherwise you're wearing clothes that are too small, your shoes are too big, you're tripping over yourself. And the worst thing that can happen is the people you need to use the system aren't using it. My sales team just completely ended up bypassing my original system that I put in because they didn't want to use it. It was too difficult. It wasn't there. So, the first thing I tell people when I'm in this situation is, what are you trying to accomplish? I want to know what you want to do. Because if you're just looking to create an Excel file, just create an Excel file. I mean, there's There's no real way around it. If you have 2 contracts a year, I'm really happy you're here listening to Chris, Paul, and myself. But if you only have 2 contracts a year, you may not need a CLM yet. I'm happy to get you one, but you may not need one. And so it's all about finding the right fit. And with Zellis, as Chris was saying, it really was. It was not just a here we are, buy the product, this is what we do. We spent hours talking about the state of CLM, the state of the market, what Chris wanted to accomplish. And ultimately, the fact is, and I will promise you, my sales team hates when I say this. They hate it, and I'm surprised I'm not about to get kicked out of the conference. But if we're not the right fit, I think our team will tell you we are not the right fit. And if we are the right fit, we push very hard to prove to you we're the right fit and to show you why. But it's important to do that analysis internally too, because you don't know. What we do find, Paul, is, and I'm glad you did post a link to the software search tool, because it really does help customers. It helps people trying to decide, figure out what's right for their organization. You know, and from there you get into the questions of, is the vendor listening to you? Are they actually coming back and saying, you know what, we fit this, or we don't, or we can build that for you, or that's not really in our roadmap. You know, we find that there are times where vendors have to go out and say, this is just not something we're interested in doing, or you know what, we've got that, we've built it for others, we're happy to implement it for you. Beyond that, I think it's really a question of, can you get along with your vendor? Are they responsive to you? Are you going to find that they're still responsive to you after the sale, or do you get handed off to a team that doesn't care, or where they go and say, here's a help file, good luck. And I think that's a big part of it is, do you want your vendor to be there for the life cycle, or do you want the vendor to drop it in your lap and walk away? I personally, Paul, my last statement would be, I personally like holding hands, as Chris mentioned. Thank you, Chris, for that smile. But ultimately, the idea really is we want you to get the product. I think I speak for, I know I speak for the ContractPod AI team here. We want you to be happy with our product. We want you to get the most use out of it you can. And that means a lot of hand-holding. That means making sure that it fits you correctly. It may not be 100% bespoke, but it's not 100%. It's not, here you are, take it or leave it either. And I think that's how we're approaching it. We want to be a collaborative, consultative partner. And that is our core goal. And ultimately, I feel that is why our product fits so many customers, but it gives you the options to put the modules in you want and not select things you don't need, or not select things that may not be right for you, but they're there when you need them.
Sure. I think we'll come back we'll come back to this whole issue of relationships in just a sec. Let's focus though on the product features. Clearly, we've heard from Chris and now from you, Jerry, around a lot of the features, value delivery, the ability to integrate into back office systems, how agility and scalability are really important things. So let's turn this around then. Let's ask our audience for our second poll of the day. Here's a list of some what we believe at least to be important factors, features when choosing a CLM system. And your challenge is to pick just one. So what is the most important factor that's driving your decision to deploy a CLM tool? Or if you're contemplating it, what's that key driver for you? And if you're not planning to if you're in that 9% of folks not planning to, if you were, ask yourself the question, what would be your driver? What would be your most significant driver? So just a couple more seconds for us to garner the results from this poll. And I really am interested to see where this is going to land. So Jennifer, let's close the poll if we can, and let's take a quick look at the results. Features, no big surprise. Value delivery. I think that will be music to Chris's ears, because certainly that was an important feature of the solution. Scalability is obviously important, so too are integrations. I'm really surprised that implementation support is seen as I wouldn't say not important, but certainly not as one of the most important. That does surprise me. Chris, any reflections on the data you see in front of you?
I mean, obviously, the value that it's going to deliver for me is fundamental, and the features I think are very closely connected to the value. I mean, all of these elements are important for a CLM tool, which is why we put them up there. I guess implementation support low on that, maybe people feel, well, if a product's got great features, if it's a highly respected supplier, and it's delivering good value, then it's going to be implemented effectively. So perhaps it's that take it as a given, and when asked to say what's the most important factor, it probably wouldn't be mine either. I would have gone for one of the two top ones, product features or value delivery.
Yeah, there's a killer question here. You can hit me for asking it afterwards, Chris. But this is coming to you. How did you demonstrate the value of a new CLM to business stakeholders in order to drive adoption across the business unit, and therefore to justify? So how do you demonstrate that value? That value delivery is so important. How do you, one, measure it, and two, deliver on that expectation?
Yeah, I'd actually just started answering it, but I'll finish the answer live. So what was I saying? I think I said in the thing I just started typing, David, that it was really it was a bit of an open goal, because I spoke about it at an interview, so it made it quite easy, because they could see that I thought this was important, and I spoke about it at an interview, and then they offered me the job. So it meant that I had quite a good segue into actually delivering a CLM system. But I think more generally, what is important, it feels to me that you've got to be engaging with the different pain points that functional leaders or departmental leaders or execs have in their worlds, and then looking at how the thing that you want to do, the solution that you come up with, will make their lives better. And then that's the value creation, not just in legal, but in all the different functional areas. And then you juxtapose that with the resource costs and the financial costs. And it touches on a point that I was going to make earlier, which is that the really interesting thing about legal is that it's very much at the nexus. It's at a crossroads of all the other functions in the business. And you can see things that are going on over here and see things that are going on over here. And you may have a really good example of a problem being solved on the left, but then on the right, that problem isn't being solved as well. And you can sort of be an internal consultative function and help improve that remediation process on the other side. And I think that having really good data and having powerful tools, systems, products through suppliers in this instance is a fantastic way of doing it, and I think it adds to the narrative in terms of convincing stakeholders that it's worth the investment. Brilliant.
And Annie asked the question: why does risk management not appear on this list? Is that not important?
It's a good question, because I think I mentioned risk management in terms of what was important to me. I said I was quite greedy when working out what tool I wanted to use. And I didn't just focus on the legal side of the functions that I'm responsible for, but I looked at the GRC side as well, so the governance, risk and compliance. And so risk management was a really big part of it. It's a fundamental part of being a GC. Ultimately, you're managing risk and you're leveraging risk to drive opportunities and helping the business to think about risk in an effective way. So it was a fundamental part of my assessment. Definitely hits squarely in the boxes of product features and value delivery for me, but should be called out on its own.
I was going to say it's an integral part of value delivery. But good point, Anya. Very good point. Right. So we've touched on the importance of relationships, but let's get it out there. Let's talk about your third experience, Chris, from your engagement of a CLM tool.
Yeah. So you've already hopefully got in your head the scene of Jerry. I mean, literally, we didn't hold hands, but we did walk along the Thames, and the sun was shining, and we did eat vegan hot dogs. So the rest of
it was lovely. I had a great time, and it was my first time in London because I had always just flown over because I was so excited to be there, and Chris was like, "I will take you out. We'll talk about CLM, and I'll show you the Houses of Parliament." It was fantastic.
The thing is, in all seriousness, though, it was a really good thing for us to do, because I think when you're just going to someone's office and you're engaging in like a staid, potentially quite grey environment, then that naturally creates more barriers. Whereas the fact that we were able to go for and chat about lots of different things and intersperse it with all the business chat, it meant that we were able to build connections far faster and get to that transparent, much better platform of communication. So I thought it was really effective, because I think the communication, that traffic between the customer and the supplier is critical, because you have to understand not just what you shouldn't just understand what the customer is asking for or the supplier is saying they can deliver. You need to understand why they're asking for that and why the supplier is saying they can deliver this or they can't deliver that. And then when you get to the why behind it, then I think you often find that there's a much closer meeting of minds, and you can work together to solve the problem and come up with much better solutions. And that's all enabled through a really effective relationship.
Totally. Okay, so Chris, take it home for us then. Your 3 things that you learned from choosing your CLM system. Yeah,
so know your business needs. We've talked about that. Find the product that fits you. So that was where we obviously discussed the requirements from that market assessment, and then it's all about vendor relations. And you have just heard about Jerry and my sort of romantic liaison down the Thames in London.
Very good. Clearly, key points, that last one, particularly around vendor relations. And we do have a couple of minutes, guys, for questions. There's a question here from Britta going back to features. Very important part for the banking and finance sector is compliance, internal compliance and external compliance, regulatory compliance. And it's a key part of a tool that is it's a mission critical element, needs to comply to the industry governance, or else it's not fit for purpose. So a little surprised that it wasn't in our list of features. I would argue, though, perhaps it would be included in that product feature component, and also a key part of value delivery. What do you think, guys?
I think that's true, and at the same time, we had seven areas that we could do. We could have listed 99 areas of important factors. So I do think it comes into the product features question, Paul. And I do think that these are things you should be asking your vendor when they're coming out. Can you manage our compliance? If you're in the US, do you work with them with GLB? Do you have all the appropriate security functionality? So these are all questions that would come up during the vendor interviewing process. Even if you don't go for a walk with your on the Thames. Sorry, I've been pronouncing it wrong all day. But even if that's not available for you, you should be asking those questions. These are really, Britta's point is absolutely true. If you need compliance features and you need specific compliance features, make sure you tell your vendor what you need, so that you don't find out 3 months into implementation, oh, we don't actually support that. But these are all things that you as the customer, the vendor should be asking from our side. And if the vendor's not asking, as a customer or as a purchaser, please bring them up. Please let us know, because we want to deliver the best thing we can for you.
Fantastic. So guys, where did that hour go? I had this vision that it was just going to shoot by, and indeed it has. So know your business need, find the product that fits your business requirements, and focus on those vendor relations. That's the takeaways. Chris, what a great set of findings from your experiences. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences today. And Jerry, thank you for your ongoing partnership. These sessions are always fun, and I hope you, our audience, learned as much as I certainly did from our panel today. Just remains for me to say thank you so much, both to our panel and to you, our audience. Some great questions, great interaction. Thank you so much. They make these webinars such a joy to participate in. And please do enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, guys. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.